J-Dog on the boards. We are looking, J-Dog and I were just talking our poll question up on X this morning, and it's a good one. J-Dog has a particular interest in this one. We ask you simply, do you think public school should start after Labor Day, not in the end of August? And a lot of parents get frustrated. I remember you get everything ready, you go, and then all of a sudden you get the Labor Day holiday break. So we think wait till what, next week? Is that how you're going with this, J Doc? That's it. So that's the question. Should we push a week out for school starting? And what's our results from yesterday, J Doc? All right. So we have a nice day out there weather-wise. Let's start with the basics. 107.7 FM, WTPL, flagship Manchester Concord. Seacoast, we added that 98.7 FM HT2 digital clarity, if you like that, and on top of our AM and FM network. Dover, Rochester, Portsmouth, you name it, up to Spalding, Barrington, middle, we can go all around the whole horn there. Stratham, Exeter, Seacoast, and of course 107.3 FM, 1490 AM in the Lakes region. That'd be EMJ. We added that extra signal there as well. I think it's 90. Well, I'll come back to that. We have another FM signal, but everywhere else, worldwide. Hey, Alexa, hey, Google, play 98.3. 98.3 FM is the additional Lakes region. HT2 98.3 FM. Thank you, J Dog. And I'll make a note of that. How about that one, J Dog? You surprised I'm making a note of that one? And everywhere else worldwide, and thousands of you. What was that? Listen, 98.3, Jade? Okay, thank you. If you like that. HD2. I got to make notes of this stuff, Jada. We're adding so many signals. So the worldwide, hey Alexa, hey Google, play the Pulse of an H, and thousands listening each morning on our app. It's a great app, by the way. I think it's the number one news talk app in the region. The Pulse of an H is download it. Go to Google Play Store. The Pulse of an H. We have it all going on for you there. And the weather broken down, the news regionally broken down, national stuff. So check it all out. And we'll tell you the results from yesterday's poll question. Let me get to some of the basic stuff this morning. We got a full show for you. We're going to have one of the candidates running in the U.S. Senate here in New Hampshire on. We're going to hear from some of our regular contributors. In one of the stories I wanted to just touch upon, the story out of the Berlin, New Hampshire murder-suicide case. We have been absolutely on top of that thanks to the great work of executive counselors John Stephen, Joe Kenny, really concerned about when that murder-suicide happened in that restaurant in Berlin, New Hampshire, and the circumstances, the classic example of stalking, domestic abuse victim, a strange, bad marriage situation where the husband would just not stop assaulting, according to police and arrest reports, kidnapping, beating, threatening, all these things, all the arrests, and a magistrate who at the time worked for the court system allowed him, after yet another arrest of injuring or going after his ex-wife, or they were separated, I guess. She was trying to get away from him to survive, basically, and unfortunately that didn't happen. But the Berlin police, everyone was arguing, don't let this guy out. You have to detain him. He's a danger to her. And then, of course, he murdered her in the restaurant, killed her, and then killed himself. But the magistrate, John Stephen and others, we've been talking about this, and it took weeks to determine the status of employment for Stephanie Johnson, the magistrate. And she was employed through the Supreme Court. The court system is how that works. And we couldn't get an answer until yesterday morning. And let me be very crystal clear. The news that this magistrate is no longer working with the court system in the state of New Hampshire, in other words, has been let go from that position, was first heard here yesterday morning at this hour, at this time, when Executive Counselor John Stephen with Joe Kenny on the line. I asked him, what is the status of this magistrate? Is she still working in these cases? And John Stephen said no. Yesterday morning, he had heard from the court, in the state, that she was no longer working in that position. So we first reported that yesterday morning at about 9:10. You heard it here first, yesterday morning, here first. WMUR has done a good investigative piece in this story, or looked into it. They had that about 3 hours later at noon. They say they learned. Well, we had it first, period. So we've been staying on top of this story because of the ramifications on other cases like this. So what I'm trying to figure out now, she's all we can find out is she's no longer working in this position with the courts, hearing cases like the Berlin, New Hampshire murder suicide. But is she still employed by the state? That's another question. But what we did learn yesterday, first heard here at the Pulse of an Age, Good Morning, New Hampshire, not elsewhere, is that she was no longer working as a magistrate with the court. So we're going to get an update as we can get an update. You also heard Kelly Ayotte, governor, going to renominate the attorney general. John Fromell, we'll get him back on the show soon. Sources telling us that the votes are there, the 3 necessary votes in the executive council to renominate the attorney general. Not hearing the same thing when it comes to the commissioner for business and economic, or economic and business development, Taylor Caswell. He's been doing the job 8+ years, was first nominated by Chris Sununu. Governor Kelly Ayotte wants to renominate Caswell for the economic, it used to be called resource and economic development, but basically the economic and business affairs person for the state. But we're still hearing that 3 of the counselors are not in favor. They want a new economic business development chief for New Hampshire. So we'll see where all that goes. A lot going on this morning. Some of the other news talk happening. President Trump yesterday, as we had John Decker, we'll hear from him in a moment, our own White House correspondent, met with his cabinet. President's very focused on the Washington, D.C. crime, the crackdown on crime in D.C., and not so much on whether or not he tries to send federal law enforcement and even National Guard to other states or cities like Chicago. But the president standing by this, and as of now, and there was just a homicide in D.C., he's now even going so far to say that any murder now in the District of Columbia, which is, the capital for our the district, Washington, D.C., any murder upon conviction could be, the death penalty could be used. So this is interesting where this goes. But so far, more than 1,000 arrests, including 2 missing children recovered, gang members arrested, I don't know how many illegal guns taken off the street. So Washington, D.C., that is continuing. And another story which we didn't maybe jump into a whole heck of a lot, but I found more than a tad amusing. Cracker Barrel is going back to its original logo. That's right. They tried to change the new logo, the new CEO, and it was only about a week since the Cracker Barrel, the CEO unveiled this new logo, which was a different, more sort of just the Cracker Barrel logo without the old guy sitting in the rocking chair with his hand on the crate. So there was a lot of backlash on social media. Some would say, oh, conservative backlash versus just how about common sense? But the old timer logo, that original Cracker Barrel logo, is coming back. Now, why do you think that is? Well, here's 2 questions for you. Why do you think they tried to change it in the first place? They had a great brand. If you've ever been to a Cracker Barrel, if you've driven from Maine or New Hampshire down to Florida and you go by them in the South, basically, they're publicly, I think they're publicly, yeah, they are a publicly traded company, because one reason why they went back to the old logo, they were getting pounded revenue-wise. People were not going there because they didn't like the quote-unquote woke games they were playing. So Cracker Barrel went back to the old logo. But I think the funny thing is, I think the amusing thing is, why do you think they even tried to change it? They had a great brand, great thing going. Now, Cracker Barrel, of course, has the porch, the rocking chairs, the shop, the gift shop, the food, and a bunch of locations. And I don't know why sometimes you think after the Bud Light fiasco, Anheuser-Busch, you think after that, and that was just a narrow lane marketing thing with the transgender debate on just one type promotion for sports, and that got out. And look at how much money Anheuser-Busch lost when people started boycotting or not buying Bud Light. When are some of these companies look at Target. No one's talked this week about Target. If you want to lump it into this discussion of Cracker Barrel now, going back to the old logo, Target CEO stepping down because sales are down. So many of these things, whether it's, I'm just going to point this out, unrelated, but whether it's a late night host show being canceled, people get all caught up in this. Revenue and customers determine the direction of business and things in this country. So when you look at the Target story, the big retailer, Target, what were they known for, folks, other than the big circle bullseye logo? What was Target known for? I'll tell you what they were. I thought they were known. I was never a big Target customer anyway, but people around me were. Is you could go buy pretty good stuff there cheaper. That's why. You could go get something for your home, a lamp, a pair of sneakers, I don't know, all kinds of stuff, appliances, and pretty good price. So Target had a lot of good stuff that people wanted, and it was more affordable. And, they started putting food stuff inside the Targets. Then they got into this whole weird they tried to get into the whole cultural stuff and the political stuff and the debates and, the different stuff on clothing and, and let's just cut right to the chase. A lot of the transgender, debate, LGBT, all the stuff that was going on in our society, they tried to get into in their merchandising, and people didn't like it. People didn't like it. The CEO is leaving Target because they're not as profitable. I don't know why people complicate this stuff. Anheuser-Busch made changes because they started losing a ton of money with Bud Light. Money, money, money drives it. You may not like it, but money drives it. Cracker Barrel going back to the old logo because they were losing money. Target CEO stepping down because sales are down. Their corporate tinkering on merchandising, just like the Bud Light example, backfired. Backfired huge. Backfired. It stopped the entire vehicle. So he's stepping down. Now, Stephen Colbert, the late night host, not being renewed at the end of the year, it's because of money. And he can say, "Oh, this is Trump and conservatives. They're muscling our network." No, your show wasn't profitable. Your show was not profitable. If he was making them a ton of money, I don't think they would have cared what his joking around was about politics. So Target CEO stepping down, they're not making as much money. Cracker Barrel going back to the original logo because they started to lose money. The customers didn't like what they were doing. Target, Bud Light, Cracker Barrel. Do you want me to go on some commentary? When will some of these corporate, I don't know, maybe they're still going with the old DEI stuff. I heard that yesterday, the DNC meeting yesterday, the Democrat National Committee. They're going to keep the controversial, the DEI stuff that a lot of people don't. They know it's core to their values. Hey Alexa, hey Google, play the Pulse of an H. You got a lot coming up this morning. John Decker, our own White House correspondent, coming up. Get a live report. Seacoast Online. Alicia Preston Xanthopoulos, top of the 10 o'clock. One of the U.S. Senate candidates. And the big race here. Hey Alexa, hey Google, play the Pulse of an H on this Wednesday. Jack Heath, J-Dog on the boards. We are back in a few. I'll come back to this one in a moment. Getting some reactions to my comments about Bud Light, Cracker Barrel, and Target. J Dog, results from our poll question up on X yesterday. I think in our poll question up on X this morning at the Pulse of an H, do you think public school should start right after Labor Day next week? Not like today. Is that where most kids are going back to school today, J Dog? I heard colleges yesterday. So we'll have those results for you. Those, by the way, that question about Chicago, our survey, I think, is more reflective of what I would guesstimate real public opinion to be, more than the polls, more than that's a daily survey we do on X, but it's very true, because if 800 or 1,000 people go do it, they're doing it themselves and answering the question. These polls that we hear politically, they can't even capture a sample anymore because no one talks to pollsters anymore. When's the last time you answered your smartphone from a number where your phone says spam, and it's some person calling from a polling outfit saying they want you to take 20 minutes of your time to do a poll on the approval rating, for example, of President Trump or likely Democrats who might run for president? You're not doing that. I'm not doing that. You know how many people have smartphones, cell phones with a 603 phone number that you've kept and had for how many phones now? Androids and Apple iPhones. And you might be living in Florida, North Carolina now with a 603 number, because that's your number. In the old days, we had wall phones or, mainline phones in the home. And when you moved, you got a new phone number when you moved to a new house. Now you move all around, different phones, different houses. You have that same number. It's yours. So why would you poll someone from New Hampshire, for example, the governor's race here, the Senate race, congressional races, and you live in North Carolina and you're no longer voting in New Hampshire? You could take part in that poll. See where I'm going with this? Polling? Yeah. Just remember last November 5th, all of them told us that day, don't think you're going to know the winner of who won the presidential race tonight on November 5th, because you're not going to know for weeks or months. It's too close to call. It's going to be contested, too close to call. Harris is going to win a number of the battleground states, as was Trump. Too close to call. All the polls. There you go. So I was just talking about the Cracker Barrel fiasco. I mean, for lack of a better subject this morning, it is fun to talk about this stuff. The CEO, they're going back to what the customers wanted, the original logo. Wow, what a novel concept. Bud Light, Anheuser-Busch, they're just going to make light beer, Bud Light beer good, and not try and get involved in the cultural wars. What a novel concept, Anheuser-Busch. How many billions did they lose? Target, the retailer, Target, bullseye. Longtime CEO is stepping down because sales are declining, because people don't like it when the place they go to buy stuff is playing cultural warfare. Lesson learned, right? A couple examples right there. Business schools for years to come can study these. All the political correctness, all the woke stuff, DEI, all this stuff for the last several years. It was on this show. It was on my program one morning when someone who worked for the state of New Hampshire in a certain division forwarded me, and they haven't. If you work, by the way, let me boil this down. If you work for the state of New Hampshire, could be Department of Public Works, Public Safety, you're part of an internal state of New Hampshire employee website. Makes sense, right? It's like your company. You have a corporate website, email. So whoever was the administrator of the New Hampshire employee website, and this was a while ago, a few years, Governor Sununu was governor, started sending out to state employees different pronouns that she thought they should use and not use at work or on the radio, different pronouns, and certain words she did not want used. I heard about this. I had a field day. I talked about this for an hour. What an absolute ridiculous, like nutty was the word Governor Sununu used when he heard about that day after my show. Nutty that you're going to start telling, for example, a Division of Public Safety state trooper chasing someone on the highway going 110 miles per hour on the radio to try to say to dispatch, worrying about lives. I'm pursuing the guy. He's doing 110. No, don't worry. We don't want you to use the word guy because that's a gender term. Oh, okay. And if you pull the person over, they didn't want them to say, "Are you a U.S. citizen?" Because that might be offensive if someone wasn't an American. Oh, yeah, this was the email went out. Certain pronouns, gender references, don't use them. So if you're a Department of Public Works person and you're coming off the weekend and the Patriots, you're watching the Patriots Sunday, and you say to the person as you're out there plowing snow or doing something, "Hey, guy, did you see the Patriots beat the Bills this weekend?" No, don't use the word guy. Might be offensive. "Hey, sister, do you have a great weekend with your relatives this weekend?" No, don't get a steak. So I point out how ridiculous this stuff was. And thank goodness, most of it's gone away. I have a brother-in-law, I won't say what corporation, major corporation he worked with since he got out of high school. He did great, had a great career. One of the reasons he left was all this corporate correctness, political correctness, governance, DEI stuff. They wouldn't hire the best person, the most qualified person. They hired someone who fit one of these identity buckets. So it didn't matter if they had any experience stocking shelves or driving a big truck. They were just filling like the DEI stuff, the categories. So he said, "I can't do this anymore." It's funny. Yesterday, the Democrat National Committee met in Minneapolis. We had Paul Steinhauser live from there yesterday morning with Fox, talking about the presidential primary calendar. And they're reaffirming yesterday their support for diversity, equity, and inclusion, better known to millions of Americans by its name, DEI. The DNC's resolution committee meeting on Tuesday during the second day of the National Party's annual summer meeting unanimously passed a resolution affirming what it highlighted as American values of diversity, equity, and inclusion. The approval of the resolution, which will face a vote by the 400 plus DNC members on Wednesday, comes as relentless conservative backlash against DEI programs in recent years. So why does this have to get political? The DEI stuff. I brought up the reference to my brother-in-law. Why can't just the most qualified person be hired when they were filling these positions? Why did some HR person who never worked in a store, it was a retail corporation he worked for, who never knew anything about stocking shelves, showing up on Saturday when someone called in sick to make sure the company was good on a Labor Day weekend, running a region, having the respect of your peer. Why couldn't they just hire the most qualified person? Didn't matter who or what that person, most qualified. Didn't colleges, through all the affirmative action crap, learn anything? These lawsuits at Harvard, didn't anyone learn anything along the way? So a lot of this political correctness, state of New Hampshire, by the way, I brought up the employee website or web, the pronouns that this person, the administrator, didn't want state employees to use anymore on the job because it might be offensive to someone. Don't say he, she, they, husband, wife, American citizen. Might be offensive. Stanford had this for a while. You couldn't even say on the term on Stanford University campus, "Hey, it's great to be an American." They didn't want the use of American at all on campus. Might be offensive to someone who's not from America. Who and this isn't political, it's just common sense. Who gives a what blank if it's offensive to someone who's not American? Where's Stanford located? Be proud to be in America in California, Stanford. Couldn't say, "Hey, guy, how was your lacrosse practice?" because it might be offensive gender-wise. Didn't a lot of this backfire? Haven't people had enough of this stuff? No, because some people can't even answer the question, should boys play in girls' sports? Hey, commentary, 603-228-2080. We'll be back in a flash in a moment. All right. I think we have both of our contributors. John Decker, our own White House correspondent. Thank you for your patience. I know you have to get over to the U.S. Open, John. President Trump meeting a lot with the media this week. You're in that press pool, our own White House correspondent, talking about the economy, crackdown on crime in D.C., immigration, world peace. Good morning, John. Interesting. I'm just curious, John, because you've asked so many questions directly of the president. Many of your questions and answers have gone, bounced around from here to Australia. Isn't it mind-boggling once in a while, even though every administration's different, every president's different, although you have to acknowledge this. You have to acknowledge this. President Biden, former President Joe Biden, and President Trump, closer in age than not. What a contrast this administration versus last administration on media access and the boss taking the questions directly, whether it's on the lawn, in an airplane, in a room at the White House, in a cabinet room in the Oval Office. What a contrast in terms of, if anyone ever did the number, it hasn't even been a year yet. The number of minutes or hours. Thank you, John Decker, our own White House correspondent. All right. Thank you, John. Alicia Preston-Zanthopoulos, sorry we were a tad tardy. How are you, Seacoast Online? You doing all right? Doing okay, although you don't really give a damn. I never believed you years ago when we worked together. I do not believe you now. You said something, and actually a sad stat, two sad stories with stronger currents and rip currents and higher seas in the last several days. But as you pointed out before, Aaron was off our coast, and I'm referencing the sad story of this Pinkerton Academy student, I think on Sunday, drowning at Hampton Beach. But the Salisbury boat that should never have gone out on that Friday, but that's neither here. It's really not neither here nor there. It should never have gone out. One person missing, but you had pointed out that the Hampton Beach lifeguards have been very busy for the last several weeks on strong currents, correct? Wow. But you had shared with me on one of our before that Hurricane Aaron was off our coast, well out there, but we felt the seas. That you had said something. I'm like, what is she talking about? That you and I had something to do with these things being posted on the strong currents. I have no memory of that. Yeah. What? I'm just getting nervous. Does that mean I'm losing I thought my memory was pretty good. I remember my best friend's phone number, Terry Carpenter, growing up in Swampscott next door. There was a landline back then, 603-593-3628. I called it so much. And how can I can't remember this. Hey, let's switch gears. Let's have some fun. I was talking about the Cracker Barrel, Target CEO stepping down, Democrat National Committee meeting yesterday in Minneapolis. They're reaffirming DEI. They're all in. It's an American. These are American values. So all the gender stuff, all the political correctness, a lot of the woke stuff that people been pushing back against the last year or two or recently. They're not now. I'm not surprised that the committee that runs the Democrat National Committee. I mean, I'm not surprised at all. They're reaffirming this, but when they go to future elections, where are I think a lot of people. Someone said this the other day on one of my interviews. They said something like, I forget how he put it. He said, "I don't care who you are, what you are, as long as you're a decent, good person. I don't care what you do, who you're married with or not. What you do in your home. I don't care about any of that. And I just want, what you have some common sense here. Like, but if you're running for office as a Democrat or Republican, someone asks you in Bow, New Hampshire, hey, you're running for Congress. If you ever have to vote on one of these women and men and women's sports, how are you going to vote on that? You probably got to answer that question, right? Mm, yeah, I don't know. I just look at colleges, universities, and I brought up the reference of the New Hampshire employee website until Governor Sununu. One day I started hearing from an employee that what the email they were sent about certain pronouns on the radio. If you worked for you know, public safety or Department of Public Works, just refrain from any gender related pronoun like he, she, guy, brother, sister, and say this, and don't say the word American. And this was from and Governor Sununu heard about it when I was talking about it. And the next day, I think he was on. He said, "This is nuts. No, it's nutty. Nutty was his word." And he goes, "The original, all this stuff that the new rewrite is gone." He said, "It's gone as of this afternoon. Gone. We're not going to do this." So, but that was the trend, Alicia. Let's not beat around the bush here. This was the trend for years. The last several years was to get into this. And I brought up many colleges. They hired. I mean, let's talk about this for a moment because we have time here. Colleges, I don't know about UNH, but major universities, Ivy League universities would hire someone and you were the dean of corporate governance. So you were paid probably a couple $100,000 a year to comb through online, on campus, all these things to be very political correct, woke, all these things, DEI, make sure people on campus don't say, hey, it's great to be an American because we don't want to be offensive if someone's not from America. Don't say, you know, hey, guy, how was your soccer practice? Because that might be offensive. I mean, all these things, that was the trend for a number of years. When Nancy Pelosi was House Speaker, she tried to write into the House, you know, preferred language. Don't even say grandmother, grandfather, say grandparent. So I think that stuff was stupid. And I got yelled at by people in my own family who I love saying, you can't be like that. No, it's not. No, I think it's stupid. I think if you're a grandfather, you're a grandfather. If you're grandma, you're a grandma. And you know what I love about kids? They're going to call you whatever they want. Bumpa, Bumpa, Nina, Papa. But I thought this stuff went too far. And I think the stuff in corporate America went too far. Like you can't hire the most qualified person. You got to hire someone that's in one of the following categories, and that's what you're telling your managers. I think that stuff was nutty. And I think a lot of people agreed, and I thought it was going away, but I don't know if it is. Yep, yep, yep. Yeah. Yeah, again, I understand, that not everyone agrees. I respect that. But you know what? I reached a point too in the last year or 2 because I even kept a lot more feelings, and when you do a news talk show like I do, and you've done it, you've hosted this show, you've done your own shows. I always feel for you to be moderately successful, you have to be genuine. You have to be who you are. The listeners, the customers are always right, and they're gonna tell if you're mailing it in, trying to be someone you're not. So, even a couple of years, the last couple of years, I'll give you one example. This is fun, so I'm gonna do this, cathartic. Very good friend of ours, and they both happen to be moms now, they're grandmoms, but a very good friend of ours. Her kids, one of her kids was home from college. True story. I've heard this from several parents, and you probably heard this. And you know how before even the Supreme Court kicked the abortion and Roe v. Wade back to the states, the kids were coming home from school. In her case, one of her kids, and the mother couldn't even have an opinion on abortion rights. The kid wouldn't even listen. The mother had no right to an opinion, according to her own daughter. And you have no right to say that you have some thoughts on, abortion after 6 months being something that maybe is not good for 8 or 9. You have no right to have an opinion. Now, where did that come from? And, there are people that are so they feel that there's no wiggle room for any other point of view if you don't agree with me, and I'm right and you're wrong, and then it becomes a moral judgment. People feel like if you don't agree with me, Alicia, you're not a good person. And you know what? After a couple of years, I just got sick of this crap. I get sick of it. You know what I'd say? No, so I don't take it anymore. I could be in a bar talking to my smarter, prettier, better half quietly without anyone. I love how people listen and then you're not even talking to them. And if your loved one says, "Oh, thank God this weekend I'm gonna go to church Sunday, thank God." And someone says, "Well, I don't like you referencing God in my presence." I'm like, "I don't take it anymore." I go, "Well, then go out and don't let the door hit you in your fat butt." I mean, I don't take it. I don't take it anymore. I don't. I'm sorry. I don't. You stick your nose into my knitting. I don't stick it into yours, but I'm not gonna sit there and be silent anymore. Yeah, yeah, yep. Wow. Yeah. Yeah, that's how I was raised. Yeah, that's how I was raised. And you don't have to yell and scream. You could my sister's left of left of left of left of left, and we love each other. All right, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Hey Alexa, hey Google, play the Pulse of NA. Check J Dog on the boards. We're back in a few. All right, always fun with Alicia, Preston Xanthopoulos, Seacoast Online. And on this political correctness stuff, which I think is alleviating and getting back to some common sense, which I think is good. If you don't, I'm sorry. I just don't agree, but we can be respectful. That's why for the last number of years, 3 or 4 years ago, I started saying in my morning show, whenever I referenced my wife, because that was one of the words that a lot of folks thought would be offensive to some. So I became actually, admittedly, tentative to say, and I don't like to talk about personal stuff on my show, but I wouldn't say, but it's part of my life. It's like a comedian. Many times will go out and talk about their their mother, their father living in Florida, like Bob Marley does, setting the thermostat when they come home to New Hampshire to 120. I'd be reluctant to say on my show, my wife had a good point the other day on this or that. I'd say my smarter, prettier, better half. And, my own kids would hear this and they'd say, "Why do you do that?" I go, "Well, I don't want to offend anyone by saying my wife." And they say, "Dad, come on." I go, "No, I'm serious. That's what we're being told by leaders and universities and the House Speaker and corporate governance. Don't say husband or wife. Don't say grandmother, grandmother. Don't say sister, brother. It might be offensive on the gender side. So don't say wife." So I said, being kind of a Swampscott High School, ninth grade wise guy, probably for the rest of my life, home of the big blue. I don't know if blue's offensive to anyone. I would say my smarter, prettier, better half had a great point the other night. I did it for years. I remember being on a remotes during this period, and listeners would come up and say quietly, "Hey, Jack, I get a kick out of this. I call my wife now my smarter, prettier, better half because I don't want to offend anyone." Do you see where I'm going with this? Do you see where I'm going with this? Hey, Alexa. Hey, Google. Play the Pulse of an Age. Got a beautiful looking Wednesday out there weather-wise. Coming up, one of the candidates running for the U.S. Senate a little bit later on. Ivy League universities, anti-Semitic or anti-American? I have some thoughts. Mike Dennehy at the 10:35 slot, back on this Wednesday, going into Labor Day weekend. Start school after Labor Day. That's our poll question up on X. Back in a moment.